friend. Welcome to Wild and Waking, a sacred space for the woman unraveling what no longer fits, remembering the truth that's always lived inside her, reclaiming her joy, her voice, her power, and rising fully, fiercely, and without apology. I'm your host, Emily Rushell, and together we'll explore what it means to live in alignment, lead with soul, and awaken a life of abundance, authenticity, and purpose. Let's begin. Hi, friends. Welcome back to Wild and Waking. Today, I'm delighted to introduce you to a new friend. Literally, like earlier this week, last week, I just so happened to see one of her posts on Instagram about really moving in 2026 from this good girl mentality into what it means to be a sovereign, powerful woman, really stepping into owning her truth, not only in business, but in life. And it just felt like it went so deeply along with what we have been taking apart here on the podcast, the conversations that we've been having. And I clicked into her profile, saw that we had some mutual friends as followers, and just on an intuitive impulse said, hey, would you want to have a podcast conversation about that before baby girl's arrival? And she said, sure. So here we are. Sara, I am delighted to get to know you. Welcome to Wild and Waking.
Thank you so much for having me. Here we are. I'm excited to dive in.
Me too. Okay, so for someone just getting to know you for the very first time, although I know even just from me sharing your posts to stories, I noticed that a lot of my community has already jumped in to start following you. But can you give us some context of who you are, where you are, and ultimately the journey that brought you into the work that you're doing today?
For sure. In the teeniest of nutshells, I have been an entrepreneur since 2012. Started as a freelancer, transitioned to coaching, transitioned to more of a scaled business model back in 2017. And for the next few years, really focused on low-end work, working with women on their sales systems, their marketing, all of those kind of things. And I was listening to your episode, just similarly, COVID changed so much for so many of us. We really had to go deeper and get to know ourselves on this new level, right? And so since 2020, I really have been on this self-discovery path, understanding that I had emotions for the first time in my entire life and
Relatable.
all those things. Yeah. And I think a lot of us are there. And so now my work is certainly still business coaching, while at the same time, there's so much more of an emphasis on the woman who is in this stage of reinvention. She's outgrown not only what she does, but how she does it. She's not willing to be the good girl and follow the rules and actually create success for herself. She's ready to create something she's obsessed with. And what I mean by that is she loves what she's doing. She loves who she's being. She's not sacrificing herself for success. And I feel like I've reinvented myself in so many ways. I've lost 100 pounds. I moved out to LA because I was unhappy in New Jersey, all of these different things. And so I'm just such a big advocate for women saying like, F that to what is good in their lives and being able to go after what they really actually want. And so again, my work is rooted in business coaching, but it goes so much deeper because we go so much deeper. It's not simple, as you know.
Yeah, we talk about that all the time in my entrepreneurship masterminds is like our personal selves and our businesses are literally one and the same. Like when you are working, a 9-to-5 somewhere else, you can compartmentalize a little bit. Of course, you're infusing parts of yourself into that job. But when it's you and your business and your life's work and your purpose, that growth piece, that inner reflection, that feeling your feelings, it's all intertangled, at least in order to do it in a way that feels good and aligned and well.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, I made a lot of money and did a lot of great things being wildly disconnected from myself, right? Like we can do it. We can, check off the boxes and make the things happen. But I was numb for so long. I wasn't actually connected to what I was doing. Everything was about what I could do for myself. And so, stepping into a place where really recognizing like, oh, I am the product and therefore I should be happy with what I'm doing. I'm fulfilled, and you can't understand that and then not do the work to get there.
Yeah. In your experience coaching women through these transitions, whether in business, life, beyond, what are some of the markers that you see when they start to realize like, oh, wow, I've really been kind of going through the motions or settling for good enough, or, I identify this feeling of like, I have everything I've ever wanted and nothing is wrong, but nothing feels right. So where do you see that coming up for your women?
With the type of women that I work with, they do have a tendency to be more cerebral in their head. And so when something starts feeling off, they don't identify it as like, this doesn't feel good. All of a sudden it's like, oh, this client's pissing me off, or they're resentful for, having to like show up on social media. And I'm always trying to like make sure that they see those cues where like, okay, this probably goes deeper. It's probably, a symptom of something else. But I think a lot of times the women that I tend to work with, and again, women that are a little bit headier like myself, they don't recognize it as a feeling as much as it is of like, this is a problem that I have to solve outside of myself.
So at what point comes the realization of like an identity that needs to be shed, or that need for really deep soul level transformation and reinvention?
I mean, the question always is, what do you want? And, I'm sure you experience this as well. 9 out of 10 women cannot answer that question. It's like, well, I went to college for this, or I should be doing that, or this is what has worked. And I'm like, that's not what I effing asked you. Like that wasn't the question. What do you actually want? And I feel like it's such a simple question, but that's really where we start to figure out what comes next. Like I'm still very strategic and very outcome oriented in the sense of like, okay, well, what do you want right now? Do you want 3 new clients? Do you want to make X amount of dollars? Okay, if that's what we want, what do we need to do to get there? And also, who do we need to be and what do we need to shift in order to actually get there? What are you settling for? What have you outgrown? And what is it time to admit to yourself that you're done doing and feeling and experiencing?
Mm. Okay, going back to the fact that so many can't answer the question, what do I actually want? Or feel really overwhelmed by the possibilities. I noticed that of like, okay, well, I think I could do this. I have the capacity to dream for that. I have this vision, but it almost feels like a mountain. Like there's too much possibility. How do you help your clients through the process of actually honing in on like their genuine desires and then going after them?
I have a tendency to feel like most of us know from a very early age what we want. I've been making the joke lately that like, not lately, it's been the truth of my life, but a joke of my life forever. That like, there's nothing more that I want to be than a pop star, right? Can't sing, can't dance. I'm going to be 41 soon. Like there are no pop star dreams that are going to become true. But I've always known that I've wanted to be seen and heard in this way, right? Like in this different type of way. And so I use that as an example of like, I feel like most of us have always known to an extent how we actually want to feel, or the way that we want to make others feel, how our lives want to go. And so I find that it's about calling bullshit on like, oh, I don't know what I want. Oftentimes they're just not even too afraid to admit it. But again, because I work with really smart women, it's a thing where I'll ask them, okay, what do you want? And instead of them admitting the thing that they want, they're already talking themselves out of, but I don't know how to get there. I don't know how to connect the dots. And so they're trying to like pull something a little bit more realistic first. And it's like, okay, can we just dream for a moment? If you had $1 billion in your bank account, if you had that magic wand and you could do whatever you want, like take a deep breath, sit here, close your eyes for a second with me, and just get honest about what it is you actually want. Again, how do you want to feel? What do you want life to look like? I always use New Year's Eve as an example, right? Like, okay, it's December 31st, 2026 right now. And it just feels like such like an emotional date, right? Like, okay, how has your life changed at that point? And I feel like that for a lot of clients, it will, all of those questions collectively, not that I pepper them all at once, but it starts to, bring up some answers here and some honesty within themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I also find that a lot of times we try to really concretely predetermine the outcome or like the task needed to get to what we want. And what I really like to root back into is like, how do you want to feel? How do you want to experience the world on a day-to-day basis? Like, how are you spending your time? What's calling you forward? What are you curious? And then letting that guide the desires without intellectualizing the process of like the one specific goal or the checklist that it's going to take to get there. Because I think so many of us have been conditioned to this like checklist mentality. If I do this, like here's my expectation, and then I'm going to get the thing that I want. And so often, like the way that we want to feel, the way that we want to move through the world can be drawn back to way closer to our current reality than even seems possible.
Absolutely. I think we find a lot of women find a lot of safety in the steps, right? It makes sense to go in chronological order. And so when we're faced with the idea of like, okay, but what if it didn't have to look that way? What if we could just like, you were spacious, your schedule was spacious, you felt this way. Like, what if that was a possibility without it having to look exactly the way that you think it has to? It's simple, but it's one of the most empowering and like progressive things that we can do for ourselves.
Yeah. I also see so much of like, whether consciously or unconsciously, absorbing of other people's expectations and like the perception of what we believe we deserve or what we've seen represented in front of us. And like the ability to really move past that is an incredible hurdle in the journey to actually acting out of true pleasure, true desire, true alignment.
It feels irresponsible, right? Again, the good girls, right? It feels irresponsible. Like I should do things a certain way. My dad ran his business this way. And so God forbid I stray from that path. Like we really just like bury ourselves under so many expectations. And it's so funny that you get this, you talk about this all the time, right? Like this is your job. And I think the average woman is still walking around having no clue as to, again, the good girl conditioning and the expectations that they're walking around living their life at 40 years old with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would love if we could dive into some of those antidotes that you brought up on the post that I referenced of, what it looks like in 2026 specifically to move from this good girl mentality, what that looks like, how we're doing it, whether we're aware of it or not. And then, the antidote to that of really stepping into a powerful woman, a sovereign being, someone who moves with alignment and purpose and intention.
So the thing that I've been obsessed with talking about lately is making more women understand that you're all going to hit your good girl peak, right? You are going to create a certain level of success and you're going to make your parents proud and you're going to make the money and you're going to hit the goals and you're going to do everything the way that you were supposed to do them. And at some point, it will stop. You will have peaked because over delivering, overachieving, abandoning yourself is only going to work for so long. I remember having my first $1 million year in 2020, and it was something that I was just living for, right? Like it felt like I had not accomplished anything until I had gotten to that point. And I remember the day hitting it, I was just like, that was it. That's what
Yeah.
that's
Like
what
now what?
all this is for. Yeah, I'm like, okay, I've got a shoe full of closets. A closet full of shoes, excuse me. And like, I worked my ass off all year long for what, right? Like, what comes next? Like, this is what I have to keep doing. And that was that good girl peak for me, although I didn't have the language for it then. And so I find that women hit this peak, but they don't understand that that's why they hit it. They just look at themselves as like, I worked hard. I was nice to people. I did what I was supposed to do. I kind of love the thing that I'm doing, but they fell out of love with it in a lot of ways. And so I find that a lot of them will be in this place where they hit this messy middle. They're in this hellish in between moment where they're like, okay, this is what I know that I want, but I'm not ready for it. I'll do it one day. I'll get there at some point. I have to keep doing it this way. I have to suck it up. I have to keep, over delivering, overachieving, undercharging, whatever it is. And I find that they're going to stay with their feet in both pools, essentially back and forth, until they recognize that number one, you have to lead with your desires. You have to. Nothing else works if you're not leading from a place of desire, truly, for women like us, let alone when we're the product. But number two, you have to understand that so often it's not the platform that you were on. It's not the program. It's not the programs you sold. It's not the career that you had that actually made you successful. So many women give their power away and make their success be about that thing that got them there instead of recognizing that like they could turn around and decide to be a dog trainer tomorrow and be wildly successful and throw everything out, burn everything out. But it takes burn everything down. But it takes them stepping into a place of ownership, of knowing that they had the power all along and trusting that they have the power to accomplish essentially anything that they want to. And I always say this, but I'm like, we're not talking about curing cancer here. We're not talking about like trying to figure out how to fly, like changing your niche. Like you can do that. Like you'll be okay. Right. But again, most of us were not taught to honor our power. We were taught to be afraid of our power, essentially. And so getting them, making somebody understand that is like my very favorite thing.
Well, and so much of that is the willingness to let go of seasons and identities and things that served us really well at one point in time. I think there's a mourning period that can come with that too.
Oh my God, yes.
And it's like honoring what you've been. Or I see a lot of women also, and I have been through this too, like kind of sink into shame of like, oh, I wasted all of this time or these lost years or I've been on the wrong path. And I wholeheartedly believe the right things find us at the right time. And every step we make along the way is building towards whatever is to come next. And so it's like having the reverence for the identity, the career, the niche, the program, the relationship, the parts of ourselves that served us really well for whatever reason in that season. And then also having the audacity to grow and stretch and expand and replace them for or in favor of what's calling us forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The thing that comes up for me is we're talking a lot about business, but also, again, I was heavy my whole life, right? Like from 5 years old, I remember my mom telling me that like I had to lose weight. And it's been such an interesting journey where like, lost a little bit. I went through a bad breakup about 7 years ago and I had gained like 100 pounds in that relationship. And I've, lost it a little by little, but there was so much shame in having gained it in the first place that then there wound up being so much like just guilt and grief around like, okay, like, but I'm letting go of that identity. I'm admitting that I messed this up or something, right? Like there is so much grief with it. And again, I'm using that example because it's the same thing with business, right? Like it's this thing where we hold on to the thing that we think made us us instead of giving ourselves permission to decide that we can be whoever we want on any given day. We hold on to the identity and we also aren't quite ready to shake what we have known. And it's such a weird paradox.
Well, it can feel like a free fall. This comes up so often in my coaching and group programs is like the willingness to reinvent yourself, to expand your identity, to step into something new. Everything from like building a new habit to launching a business to, transforming a big piece of your identity and worldview. Like that willingness to step into the unknown and that messy middle of transformation is more than the average person will ever give themselves permission to do.
Ever. Ever. It's such a scary thing, but it's so interesting to watch so many women so wholeheartedly want an entirely new reality, but then be so terrified to do anything new or experience anything new. And, I think we just all go through it in this messy way until we're like, we can't stay in the same spot anymore. But I also think that like, to give ourselves credit always is like, I've gone through a big transition over the past few years and there have been so many moments where I'm like, why is this happening? Like, why can't, like, I know I'm going to get to the other side, but I'm ready for the other side now. Like, where is it? And then every breakthrough, I'm like, oh, I'm so glad that it didn't occur until now because this is why we do what we do, right? We can teach and guide other people through those messy moments.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, systemically, we've been disconnected from ourselves and our power. And so part of this is not, I think we can label the fear of failure, the fear of success, but I think a lot of it is also like holding ourselves back from the innate power within and like really being willing to step into that and reclaim that is viscerally unfamiliar for a lot of us.
I think you're around my age. Like, I think we're in such a unique place where I think we can safely say that all of our parents were wildly emotionally unintelligent for the most part, right? We're really having to teach them or attempt to teach them just emotions and all these things. And so we're at this really unique place where generations, again, before us, I don't know, I've given up on my parents. Like they're not changing, right? Whereas like generations that are younger than us, they've been exposed to so much of this so much earlier. And so we're in this place where like it still feels very unrealistic. Like, what do you mean lead with my desires? Like that, that doesn't even make sense because we weren't taught that. And so I don't know, I think it's exciting to see that hopefully it will come easier, but we're in a rough place with it because we're learning all of this for ourselves.
We're in this like really tender yet magical place of awakening with so many women in our generation. I'm about to be 36, so we're similar ages, but I find it to be so exciting. And I know not everyone's there, but I think so many women are in their own way, whether or not they've really come into conscious awareness of it, but just like the level of depth and questioning and willing to do things differently and challenging. Like, it sounds so cliche, but like we were born for a time such as this. And looking around, of what is just happening in our world, it's like, yeah, we are ready and we are going to be recreating what this reality looks like. And it's exciting and also scary.
It's very scary, but I agree. Like, again, and this is why the fact that this gets to be our jobs, like we're working right now, right? Like that is the coolest thing in the world to me. And so it's, again, scary, but also like a really beautiful, exciting gift that we have.
Okay, I would love to backtrack a little bit. You mentioned in 2020, you hit your $1 million year. You'd been working so hard, built this incredible business, and then kind of had these moments of realization of like, okay, like now what? Like that was cool. Like I'm proud of myself, but like this doesn't feel quite right. Can you walk us through, some of those evolutions that you went through and maybe what you were doing before compared to how you move through the world now, both in business and in life? We've talked a lot about leading with desire, going after what you really want, like building the reality that you crave. And I think sometimes it can be really powerful to see tangible examples of the way, women have walked through that and what their day-to-day existence looks like compared to, kind of the default operating procedure in which they had been.
Yeah. So I'll backtrack to 2017 because that's always like a big part of my story. But I was with a man for 5 years, had kids, we had a business together, a dog, a house, all the things. Cheated on me. We broke up in the most just painful of ways. Like it was really difficult for me. Greatest thing that ever happened to me, but it was really difficult for me at the time. And so, I remember I had a 6-figure year in 2016, but I was broke by January of 2017 between moving and all these things. And I hadn't gotten off the couch, right? Like all I was doing was watching Grey's Anatomy and crying, essentially. Like my heart was just broken. And I struggled with it for quite a while. And then finally, like weeks into the new year, I finally just had this moment where I was like, if this just happened to me, I'm going to go make a shit ton of money. Like I'm going to go and rise up. And so I went
That's some like
hard.
fuck you money right there.
It
You were
was,
like,
yes, it was my revenge bank moment. And
I love it.
yes, it was great in many different ways. So I literally started showing up every single day in my Facebook group at the time, live videos every single day. I started selling low end things. My 2017 was my first 500K year, and our average transaction was $217 because I didn't have the capacity to take on, like I couldn't take on other people's emotions. I wanted everybody at an arm's length. I wanted to sell all the low end things, and I just hustled. And so I proceeded that way for the next few years, right? Doing the live videos every day, selling all the low end things. And it served me well, right? Like there are no regrets about that. But I think 2020, going into 2021, especially after having hit the $1 million year, it was kind of like, but do I want to go live every day? Do I want to keep writing these sales pages? Like it's become just what I do and who I am and part of this like disciplined thing. But I'm finding more and more that I'm beginning to like resent this. I'm beginning to like for this to not feel good. And coming off of that breakup, I didn't heal anything. Money was like awesome. It felt great that I had that moment, but I didn't face anything. It was very much a band-aid for a lot of things.
Like a
And so
dissociation and a distraction.
1,000,000%. Like I didn't date for 5 years. I didn't have sex for 5 years. Like I was just like head down, making money, working all the time. And again, at some point that you can only ignore yourself for so long. It stops feeling good after a while. And so I hit definitely, the following year was interesting for me. It wasn't a terrible year at all. It was like a $750,000 year, but it was so interesting for me to like find this balance between soft and hard, right? Like I knew how to go hard. I did not know how to work without pressure. I remember like there were several just times I would launch things in 2021 and then I'm like 4 days in, I'm like, I'm going to go to Miraval, this like resort I love in Austin. Like I would just kind of like get up and leave. Of course, I would still like honor and do what I need to do for my clients, but it was like if the pressure isn't fueling me, how do I do this? I don't know. And it was a really, really, really interesting year, but it was what I needed. Like I needed that time to heal. I needed that time to get to know myself, but it was messy. It was really, really messy.
I went through a period of like that. It felt like a pendulum swing. Like once I had finally looked in the mirror and confronted this addiction to approval and achievement and accolades and, doing something for everyone else as a means to define my self-worth. And once I untangled and healed that, it was like I swung into this apathy. And I'm like, I don't know how to move through the world without this like anxious pressure that has always driven me.
Yeah. It's such a common thing. I think we go from our wounded masculine to our wounded feminine. And, something I'm constantly talking about now is like making sure that my clients get back to that. Like I call it the sweet spot, right? Like we have to find that balance because it's even, I was listening to your episode that aired right before this, the solo episode, the part 1 of the framework.
Yeah,
And you were
the
talking about,
unraveling.
yes, you were talking about how like your business coach really encouraged you to have some like tangibility around like what you were doing. And I use that as an example because I'll work with women who like they were so disciplined for so long that all of a sudden they just want to say whatever they want to say whenever they want to say it and kind of just like go off the deep end. And we always have to find the balance with all of it, right? We're still business owners. We have to be strategic, but we can do that and honor ourselves. We don't have to swing so hard. And I feel like a lot of women, they were in their masculine for so long. And then when they see the world of like the woo and the I just make money because the crystals and this, that, the other thing, right?
I just
Like
speak it into existence and money falls
right.
from the sky and I frolic through the woods and it's great.
Right. But like really smart women, it's not that they actually believe that, but they're like, oh, like, but that does sound good compared to like where I've been, right? Like they kind of get like sucked into it and then again go too far, the pendulum. Like and we have to come back to center. And I feel like that's a part of the reinvention process for a lot of the women that I work with.
So, in that year, I think you said 2021, you were kind of finding your way through that. What did the other side of that year look like?
It's actually unfair to say just 2021 because I would be lying if I said that it ended, right? It was kind of it definitely played out for a little while there. I then found myself wanting to go next level, whatever that meant, wanting to go bigger, wanting to do more things. And the example that I'll often use is I invested a lot of money into an agency, a design agency specifically. And I was kind of telling myself that like, I need this level graphics, I need this level website, this level whatever. And not that any of those things are necessarily wrong, but it was a big investment. I was paying like 10K a month for a little while there. And it was just so interesting where I had the money to invest to go next level, but I wasn't quite ready to actually show up as that person. And it wound up, they were wonderful, nothing against them at all, but it wound up being a really great way to waste a lot of money. And it feels like a very big regret. And so, again, I use that example as like, we have to get on board with what we want, who we have to be to get it to do that. And something that I'm always trying to remind clients of is like, but if you're not ready, that's okay. Right? Like I almost wish that I had admitted to myself that I wasn't ready and continued to do what felt comfortable. Or I'll use the kind of example of like how women will like want to, quit the full-time job. Right? And it's like, cool, great. I believe that if you leap off that cliff, you can make things happen. But if you're going to leap off the cliff and freak out, let's be honest with ourselves that we need a little bit more time. Right? And so again, I was kind of there for a little while where I was like intellectually up to par in terms of where I wanted to go, but I wasn't quite ready to be seen and actually show up in that way. And so it was just a lot of mess, to be honest with you, for a few years there. It's still good, ran my business, made money, more money than most people do, but it wasn't up to my standards, right? But now looking back on it, I'm so grateful that it happened that way.
Yeah, I resonate with that a lot, especially over the last 18 to 24 months or so. It's like intellectually being ready for what's to come, but not being fully embodied and integrated and like going through the journeys and the evolutions and the shedding and the death portals and the shit that I have had to. And now retroactively, I can be like, oh, that makes sense. That makes sense. But it's also really interesting when you're on a growth journey to have the awareness in real time to be like, I know that I am in process right now of a reinvention. And logically, I know what that's going to look like on the other side, but I have to be in it, which is so, deconditioned from this, like, what comes next? What comes next? And you'd be constantly on this like wheel or mountain of escalation and improvement and learning how to kind of sit in the muck and know like this is playing out how it's meant to be. I hope I have decades on this planet to do the work that I'm meant for, and not everything has to be in a hurry. Ooh, that is viscerally hard.
Impossible. It's impossible for those of us who are, again, achievers. I was doing I did a podcast episode recently on Jenna and Amy, how everyone's talking about, their big transitions. And I'm like, there's so much criticism for them. And I was just trying to humanize them in the sense of like, do you really think that these are two women who are sitting there being like, I'm going to do this and I'm just going to let go of it and everything's going to be fine and I've got everything figured out? I'm like, they're probably torturing themselves. They're probably terrified of what's happening right now. Like none of us, it doesn't matter how much money you make, in my experience anyway, that we just feel comfortable taking leaps or we just feel comfortable trusting ourselves. We're still in that place of like, what comes next? What do we want to do? Like, right? It's ingrained in us. But I think the answer, it's obviously the most basic thing in the world to say, is that like for so many of us, the answer has to come through embodiment, but also the action. Whereas I think so many intellectual, intelligent women, it's like, I'll read the next book. I'll join the next mastermind. I'll learn this new thing. I'll try to fix myself instead of like, you got to be different. Like, that's all there is to it. Like, are you going to move differently?
Yeah. So what are some of those tangible, when we're in the process of evolution and when we're embodying the next level and when we're stepping into a reinvention, like what are some of those tangible pieces of I am growing into the person who can hold the next evolution?
I think that we have to stop acting like validation is a dirty word. So I think when we ask the question, like, what do you want? It's very easy for a lot of us to assume that that means like big picture. It means, what do we want for the rest of our lives? Here's what's to come 10 years down the road. And so it's like, okay, if you actually want to charge more than you ever have before, what if we set out to sign a new client at that price point this week? Or what if we start pitching ourselves on some podcast episodes right now today? And I always like call it the Tinkerbell effect, right? Like once we feel the validation, once we feel somebody clapping for us, it obviously it creates more momentum, of course. But I think way too many of us go into like the planning and the figuring it out. And I find that most of us don't benefit from that. So the very simple answer is to move, like decide on one thing different that you want and go after it. Because I don't think the women in our spaces, like I have met very few who have truly gone all in on something and have failed.
Yeah.
We fail because we're not ready to do it, to actually like go all in, or we have those doubts, whatever it is. And so by actually doing it, like I signed 2 clients this week at the highest prices that I ever have charged before. And that was an identity shift. That in and of itself, it actually happening. And I think a lot of us think that the identity shifts happen in the journal or happen in, the behind the scenes. And it's actually just doing the thing to make yourself proud.
Yeah. It's like looking for the proof before you do the thing that gets the proof.
Yeah.
It's like the expectation that you're going to wake up one day and be like, today's the day. I am a whole new person. I am ready. And it's like, yeah, there's part of, the sitting in this integration and then part of just doing it and then letting everything catch up.
Yeah. What I've been saying a lot lately to clients is finding a balance between like safe and sparkly, right? Like we have to think of like that sparkly, exciting thing that would like, ooh, like it's not like, oh, I want to make this amount of money, but like, ooh, like I would love it if I signed a client for, an in-person VIP day because I've always wanted to do that, but I've never done that. Okay, that feels sparkly. Okay, let's combine that then with a price that feels safe. I don't care if it's $1, if it's $1 million, that's up to you. But like, let's make sure that we're doing things that we're not all of a sudden pretending we're an entirely different new human being, right? Like what would actually feel safe here? What would make you feel like it could actually happen? And then let's pursue that. And it's going to take a little bit of a leap of faith, right? But like the other thing that I keep saying to everybody lately is like, get hungry before you're starving, because I think it's very easy to then get comfortable and then not make those uncomfortable moves. But like, let's do it now while you can. And again, create that progress for yourself.
I love that. A lot of the women who listen to this podcast are living in rural communities, in smaller towns. We're not hanging out in Los Angeles, right? And so there's kind of these like extra layers of expectations of what life is supposed to look like, or what a good mom does, what a good wife does, what a good girl does, right? And so many of us are going through this reinvention and expansion in what feels like microscopes or bubbles or boxes, which I know is not actually an isolated experience for rural women. I've talked to women who live in all different kinds of places who are like, no, I actually feel the exact same way. And, I'm in, metropolitan, wherever. So, what would you say to someone who feels the weight of clearly defined roles or ways of moving through the world, or like this cap of possibility, but logically can see that there is so much more and is like ready to move from this place of bigness and desire and like breaking past anything that they've ever known, whether in business, whether related to finances, or rather just, in the way that they move through the world and choose to do things differently than their family of origin and neighbors. What would you say to that woman?
I think that if you exist, they exist, right? If you're sitting there feeling like this isn't enough or this isn't big enough for me, it's very easy for us to feel isolated as if we are the only ones, but it's simply not the case. If you exist, they exist. And so sometimes we have to make it our mission to go out there and find like-minded people, go out there and find people who are doing things similarly to us, right? Like we're not, this isn't 30 years ago. Like the internet is a pretty beautiful thing for being able to witness that there are other people doing what it is that we want to do. But if you can't find that, like create what you're craving and do it in a way that feels safe to you. To go back to 2017, when I was saying that I was showing up in my Facebook group, I at the time, again, had gained a bunch of weight. I was not in this place where I was super confident in myself. And so if you had told me like to go live on Instagram or go live on my Facebook profile, like I would jump out of a plane before I would do that. Like that was terrifying to me. So not showing up, not progressing wasn't an option. I had to create a safe space for myself. And that wound up turning into millions of dollars, right? By me finding a way to do it on my own. And so there's always an opportunity to me to create what you're craving, whether that's locally, whether it's you like starting a podcast and never putting your face out there and just seeing what happens, right? Like I always feel like a grandma when I'm saying this, but like we live in this like incredible time where we get to pick up our freaking phones and make money. So do it, right? Do it for yourself. And again, go out there and find that validation, quote unquote, like find the people who get you and are going to clap for you and open yourself up to the very real possibilities that exist. And, something that I'll often say to clients, especially when they're switching niches, is like, a lot of us will act as though, remember like when we were in elementary school and you literally thought that those were the only other kids on the planet. Like the concept that there were kids like everywhere else, like didn't exist. So like you're seeing what you've experienced, sure, but like
the world is so big.
Look at how limited that is. Yeah, look at how limited that is. Like that factually. So let's go out there and experience it and get uncomfortable.
Yeah. And every single time that I have pushed past my comfort zone and my perception of reality and like said the weird thing, done the thing that felt super stretchy, like put myself out there in a way that I wasn't sure if anyone was going to resonate with, it has always brought me straight to the people who were like, oh my gosh, me too. I have never heard anyone say that before. I thought I was the only one. I thought I was an alien. Like there is truly many someones for everyone. And that's true of business, whatever it is that you're navigating.
Absolutely. I had this conversation with my sister in the sense of like, she was worried about going on a certain date. And, she was very in her head about like, well, is it going to go this place or is it going to go whatever? Are they going to like me? And I'm like, everyone's craving connection. Like everyone is craving connection. Like whatever happens, happens. But like there are people out there who are feeling the exact sense of loneliness, the exact sense of boredom, whatever it is you are. And so if we can remember them too, right, to honor what we want for ourselves and that remember there is somebody else craving that also. And actually you get to like show up like not selfishly and it gets to be about like them and the purpose that you're serving. It's there. It's there. And when we can take ourselves out of it, we can see that obviously a lot more clearly.
Yeah. It's like you holding yourself back out of fear. And like, what are these people who are never going to understand you going to think is holding you back from the connection of being in service and community with the exact person who needs exactly what's on your mind and what you have to offer.
Yeah. Not everyone's going to like us. Of course, we want to be liked by everybody, but also like, do we really hear how silly that sounds? That we literally expect everybody on the planet to like us, to agree with us. Like it's not going to happen. Like that, it's just not going to happen. So we may as well embrace that and then find our people.
And that goes back to that good girl mentality of like, if I can just manage enough of everyone else's perception of my reality and what I want, and I can hide myself, I can show up just in a way that's safe enough, then I will be protected from criticism, from critique. And it's like, well, all you're actually doing is self-abandoning. All you're actually doing is sacrificing your desire, the way that you could move through the world, for the comfort of people who are never going to understand where you're going ever.
Never. And you don't want to understand them. Like I don't want to understand people that are just unkind and the trolls on the internet that say whatever they want. Like I don't want to understand you. Like I want to have empathy for everybody, but I don't want to get you. So I'm also okay that you don't get me. That's okay.
Yeah. I mourn the times that I did or didn't do something for the perceived approval of people I would never trade lives with.
Ever. And it's the way we hold ourselves back from that is, do you see this? It's a silly example, but I'm just thinking about this. And I don't even know if this is true, but do you see that woman who did her, like just did a little TikTok video and she was like, this is my jingle for Dr. Pepper. Right. And it was like, she just like, I'm not going to sing. I won't harm your listeners' ears with that. But she did this little like jingle. Dr. Pepper put it in a commercial and just paid her $2 million. And like, it was like the silliest little like thing that she just did, probably like, who knows, in her bedroom. And like, there's just so much on the other side of us sharing our quirks and our gifts and we have access to do it, that like to hold ourselves back because somebody's going to think that's silly. Like, no, life is too short for that.
Yeah. Yeah. 100 years from now, we will all be but a blip in time. So like, why not build the life, the reality, the desire, the wealth that is possible?
Who wants regrets? Who wants to regret something like that? None of us do.
Ugh. Sara, this has been so wonderful. I just love getting to talk to someone who is, so in alignment with the things that we've been having conversations about here on Wild and Waking, but teaching about it from a totally different place in a totally different way. So thank you for this conversation. But before we close out, the question I ask every guest on the show is, what does growth look like for you in this season?
Oh, growth looks like being obsessed with every aspect of me. That's like, obsessed is my word right now, right? Like I want to be, if not putting something out there, if I'm not obsessed with the offer, if I'm not obsessed with the price point, if I'm not obsessed with the person that I'm working with, it's a no. My body, right? Like it's not about, oh, I have to lose weight, or like from a negative perspective. It's like, I want to love and be obsessed with every aspect of me and holding myself to that standard and paying attention to when I'm not rising up to it. So that's kind of like the internal compass that I'm really kind of like focus on for myself right now so that the growth doesn't stop.
I love that so much. I'm obsessed, you might say.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. I love this.
Oh, absolutely. Okay. So for anyone listening that's like, okay, I have got to learn more from Sara. I've got to get deeper connected into her world. Tell us what offers you have on the table, where we can get connected, where we can follow you, all the good stuff.
Absolutely. So right now I have simplified like crazy. And so I've got a free series. It's a private podcast series called the Reinvention Files. And I'm just saying things when I want to say them. They're kind of like random episodes, but it's really great, especially for those of you in the process of a transition. So that's a free audio series. And then the only offer I actually have right now is to book a one-on-one call with me. 60 minutes. We figure out what's going on in terms of your reinvention and what the next steps are. And that's that. And Sara Dann, the Sara Dann on Instagram is probably the best way to connect with me.
Wonderful. And we will link all of that in the show notes. So if this conversation sparks something in you and you would love to learn from Sara, dive into your own reinvention with her magic and sparkly genius, go ahead and click the link in the show notes, send her a message on Instagram. Sara, thank you so much for generously offering your time and your talent and your wisdom. I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Hey friend, I hope this conversation sparked something real in you, something that feels like truth, curiosity, or the courage to keep becoming. If this episode resonated, I'd love for you to share it. Take a screenshot, post it to your stories, or send it to one of your friends. You can always find me over on Instagram at Emily Rushel, where I love continuing these conversations and hearing your takeaways. Truly, your DMs are one of my favorite parts of podcasting, so don't be shy. I'd love to reflect and connect with you over there. I'm so grateful to be surrounded by a community of women who ask hard questions, sit in the discomfort of the unknown, blaze new paths forward, and ultimately come home to their wild and waking selves. See you next week.